Hey beloveds, welcome back to this episode of the Living Consciously podcast with me, Yvette Ratshikhopha, also known on digital platforms as Yvette Aloe. Today I have two amazing guests. If I had that thing, I'll be playing it for you guys. And we are having such a good topic. The conversation today is about, what is it about? Things you need to know before you get married. I'm sorry, guys. It's the end of the year, so I'm tired. But yeah, things you need to know before you get married. And we're just going to go over a few things around that topic. I've got Mrs. G over here. Oh, love Mrs. G, also known as Nosipho. And yeah, we're going to be talking to you in terms of being married. She is a coach, but she'll also introduce herself further. And I've got Tintswalo Masiye over here. And she does a lot of work on inner child healing. And she'll also tell you about that. So ladies, welcome.
Hey.
How are you guys doing today?
We're good.
You guys look good.
Yeah. Thank you. You also look very good.
Thank you. Yeah, so maybe we can start with Tintswalo. You can introduce yourself and let the people know who you are and what you do.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Tintswalo, like Yvette has mentioned. I am a podcaster as well. My podcast is called The Courageous Journey. The Courageous Journey is basically talking about everything that I work on. I am a conscious parent coach. I work a lot with inner work. I work a lot with shadow work and the modalities of healing the inner child and basically living as your authentic self. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Tintswalo. You guys should absolutely check out her page and her baby she posts. And she posts a lot of yoga poses and really cute stuff, but also a lot of work on inner child healing. And yes, Nosipho, tell us a bit more about yourself.
Hi, hello everyone. So my name is Nosipho Gamede. I love Mrs. G. I am a professional business coach, but I've got a background in psychology as well. So and that's how I got introduced into coaching, basically, because personally I really wanted to get to meet the person behind the business. And I think that's where you actually find the person, because most of the times we don't think of ourselves as businesses, but I actually want us to conscientize that we are actually a commodity. And that's how I got into business coaching, where you can then be yourself in whatever business that you are in. I say for myself, business coaching is, you can master your art, like whatever profession that you're in, but if you master yourself as the person behind the art, then you will not be fazed by much, because you will know where your center is all the time. So, and I've also expanded that into nature retreats, because I found that it's easy for you to actually let go of certain things when you're outside of certain walls,
Yeah.
buildings, an environment, or whatever. So I love nature, and I'll introduce the working on yourself outside, outdoors, nature, walks, hikes, riverside, wherever. And I think, it's very nice. It's chilled.
So you're one with the waters. I am here for the waters. There's that
Those
video
waters, we have waters
of
now.
Beyonce saying that, she just loves water, and how it makes her feel. And I think I understand what you're saying completely about nature and its healing elements, how it has the perfect vibration, so that allows us to recenter ourselves. So thank you for coming here, ladies, and thank you for making time. I know this conversation is going to be a very interesting one. And there's a question I want to ask both of you. Just as an icebreaker, right? 5 years ago, did you see yourself married at this age? Given that our conversation is about things you need to know before you get married. 5 years ago, I know you've been married for longer, so I'm going to say for you 20 years ago.
So I wanted to say, well, yes.
I mean
13 years in, so might as
you were
well.
within. Okay, so for you, 20 years ago, did you see yourself married at this age? And for you, Tintswalo, as well, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, did you see yourself married at this age? Yeah.
Okay, I think yes. I did see myself married, but I'm not sure at what stage.
Okay.
Yeah. I grew up in a family with my mother and father, so the modeling of a family and growing up, you become a woman, you become a wife, you become a mother. So yes, I did see myself there. I didn't know at what stage, whether I'd be happily married, whether I'd be divorced later on or anything, you see. But no, I definitely did see myself. I think it was modeled for me, and it's something that I thought is normal. And yeah, it's a must, so to say. Unfortunately, unfortunately, I don't know. Yes, so that's what the topic's about.
That's interesting. I think that a lot of people, it's like that, right? We see a lot of behavior and then we want to model it. So I like that you mentioned that. And for you, Tintswalo, 10 years ago, yeah.
5 years ago, I would think that, wait, the question is, did I see myself getting married or did I want to get married?
Same. Almost the same question, so both.
Okay, so 5 years ago, I saw myself getting married basically because we live in a culture that conditions us to believe that marriage is something we need to strive for. And 5 years ago, I wouldn't really say I wanted to get married. It was more of the conditioning that made me think that I need to get married. So my perspective has shifted from the 5 years ago to now. So right now, do I feel like I need to get married? No, I don't. Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be a very interesting conversation because I know you guys are coming from like different perspectives.
Yes,
when I contacted Tintswalo,
great.
she's like, and I think it'll be also great for you guys who are watching or listening to this podcast just to get, both angles from it, Me, on the other hand, I'm the middleman.
You're just neutral.
I could be on any side. I could be on any side. But I think that's very interesting, how we are conditioned to get married. And a lot of people do get married because people said they should or society said they should, but they never took the time to figure out if it's for them, if it's a system or a structure that works for them, because there are certain things that you need to know about marriage or need to be prepared for. And there are certain things just like everything else in life, if you get a license, you need to renew it. Yes. There are certain things and responsibilities that come with that type of commitment. All right, so let's start. So I'm just going to pose this question to you guys. What are the things that you think people need to know before they get married or make a lifelong commitment? Miss G, obviously we're all looking.
Yes, she's been in it for 13 years.
Oh yeah, yes. How long have you been married for again?
Yeah, this is the 13th year I'm starting, so yeah.
13th?
13th, yeah. So
wow.
I finished 12. That was October last year.
Yeah.
October this year, sorry, yes. So 12 years and a few months. Yeah.
Right. And what are the things that you think people need to know before they get married?
Is this at 5 years or 20 years before or now? Now that I am.
Now that you are.
Okay, now that I am.
Yes.
Okay. It's underrated, and I think also at the same time people should know themselves. Like, just know yourself. Like I said, I wanted to get married because it was modeled for me. I saw my parents, I saw this is the life that is. Tintswalo used the word condition, because society will tell you, even if your parents are not, but you see that, no, it's an achievement, without having to apply yourself in what role then do I play? What kind of marriage would I want? How many kids would I want? And so I found that now it's so important that you know yourself first, because you teach the other person how to love you. So for me, it sounds corny and sounds overused, but I think you must know yourself first.
And
honestly.
If I can ask further, what are the parts of self that you had to get to know in order so that your husband can love you in the way that you want to be loved? What are the parts, even during the marriage and before the marriage?
The parts of me, I think for him, he had to see, based on that condition again, see the type of wife that he wants. And if I fit that role, then that was me.
So the expectation
yes.
of what it looks like for him and what it looks like for you.
Exactly.
Okay, continue.
Yeah. But then for me, I don't think I knew.
Okay.
I don't think I knew. And all I did was, like I said, I literally modeled what I saw happening.
In your own...
marriage.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I actually like the fact that you're being honest, because a lot of people assume that the role they're playing is a role that is genuine to them, whereas it's actually an expectation. It's not even coming from the guy. It's a cultural expectation and a cultural view that they hold that women should have a certain way in which they model being a wife in the marriage. So I like that she's actually being honest, because many women would refuse to say that. No, they say, no, this is who I am. This is me. We are in love.
I've always wanted, I'm nurturing. I'm this, I'm that.
Sure. I think for me, it's also been the same thing where, for me, I was raised by my mother, and I always saw her climbing the roof and painting, going to the garden and planting things, building things. I was telling my partner the other day that we literally paved our home ourselves, not because we couldn't afford it, but because my mom really enjoyed that type of stuff. So she would get us over the festive season, and you know, I have different feelings about this now, but over the festive season we'd be out there mixing the soil and the cement, and we'd be paving. And I also enjoyed that a little bit more than cleaning. Like I remember I always avoided certain roles, you know, and I would lean more to the other, and I've had to actually learn to step into my feminine in order for my relationship to work, you know, not because also I had also the benefits. I'm like, well, it's kind of nice to be taken care of. It's kind of exhausting to always be this person where I'm independent, you know, I'm strong. So even when it comes to that role of, you know, like my mom modeled a certain role for me, you know, and when it came to a lifelong partnership, I had to figure out, you know, like where I fit into it, you know, what works for me and what doesn't, you know. And I think that's the same thing in marriage, you know, where we model, that's how we are as human beings. We model what we see growing up. So I love that you mentioned that, Tintswalo, just about, you know, that figuring it out for yourself, you know, what it looks like, and not just modeling because what you saw your parents doing, right? And it might not be the right way to do it. Just because your parents did it and it worked for them doesn't mean that it'll work for you and your partner in this generation and in the way that your personalities are based.
And here's another one. We always assume that it worked for our parents, only because we are also continuing the same trauma, if I should put it.
Sure.
Yeah. So we assume that, wow, they've been married for 60 years. That must mean that things are great, but we don't see and dismantle and deconstruct what is actually happening, the reality of the relationship itself, how they communicate, how they handle discussions or fights, how they actually make time for themselves, how they actually attune to the kids. So we automatically assume because they are together and how things look on paper, we automatically assume that it's great. And we also live in a culture where marriage is about longevity. So the longer you're married, the greater it's going.
The successful it is.
It's not about the evolution of the self, and it's not about if you're growing. The first thing people ask you, wow, how long have you been married for? 13 years. Wow. They'll never say, okay, how much have you grown in that relationship? Have you been sacrificing yourself? Have you been denying yourself your true being and your authenticity? Wow. And we also live in a culture that ostracizes women that actually want to move out of the marriage paradigm, who say, you know what, this is not working for me. I actually want a divorce. We laugh at them. We ostracize them. So many women aren't even sitting in marriages because they truly want to be there, but it's because of society, the cultural conditioning, as well as the ostracism they face. You know, they fear facing. Also, there's no community where women are concerned. When one woman divorces, they've got no one to turn to.
And there is a lot of stigma just around that. And I absolutely believe that relationships are meant for your growth, you know, and it looks different, you know, when you're married, it looks different when you're, even before you're married, you know, it's a matter of, that's what I think my purpose is, you know, to say, hey, whenever my partner and I have conflict, I'm like, okay, which parts of myself need to heal through this experience, instead of focusing on him and what he's not doing for me. I just get back to the awareness that there are things that, you know, also understanding things like, what do you call them? Not trauma bonds, attachment styles, you know, so and different ways of communicating and different expectations. So whenever something happens, I'm like, which part of myself needs to heal? Which part of myself needs to grow? And also we tend to attract, even if you're dating or married, the person that we need in order to evolve. And if we don't perceive it that way, all of it feels like suffering. And I have two questions for both of you. I think with Tintswalo, what was the deconstruction process for you? Like, because you spoke about how, you know, you must have deconstructed all of these things for you to get to the point and saying, this is not for me, because 5-10 years ago you were like, maybe, you know, because of the modeling, etc. And for you, what has what's my question? I should have had a pen so I can write it down.
maybe Tintswalo finish so that she also doesn't lose her question.
Yes. So we'll park it, but I also have a question for you just in terms of being in the marriage, right? What are the things that allow that marriage to consistently evolve? Because you've been in it for 13 years and people think that you need to remain the same in order to remain married. And I think that's one of the biggest conflicts. It's like when I met you, you were fine with being a housewife, you know, or when I met you, you were this person, but nobody stays the same. And I want you to speak about that specifically. All right, so Tintswalo, go ahead.
Okay, can I just comment on that? I think I also like you raising that because the whole till death do us part is what really binds us to thinking that you need to remain the same person for all those years. And anything outside of that and you evolving threatens the relationship.
Yeah.
And it threatens it because the vibration that you guys met at, which is the trauma bond, which is the attachment styles, no longer feel familiar to the other because now you're overcoming, now you're growing, now you're attuning to yourself, you're putting yourself first and you're saying, no, I will not cook at 2 a.m. when you come back because this is where I prioritize myself. Yeah, just to add on. But for me, the whole deconstruction and dismantling, because, you know, we assume that marriages are for the other and we assume that marriages are for us to come together and to do something together. But it's actually about you doing everything within yourself and it being a reflection through the other. So for me, the deconstruction came where I looked into myself. I said, wow, I have traumas. Wow, I have an inner child. Wow, I've got unconscious beliefs. Wow, I have learned communication patterns. Wow, I've got a whole lot of issues that are happening within me. And then I started to see, wow, my partner actually mirrors all of those. They resemble everything that I embody. Now, are these all mine? No, they're not mine. Okay, wow, I'm seeing my dad in my partner. I'm seeing a bit of myself in my mom. I'm seeing a bit of myself in my mom's mom, in my partner's mom. Now everything is making sense. Okay, how do I start dismantling these concepts? How do I start looking into why I feel and think like this? Oh snap, there's something called generational trauma. My mom's mom, like it's just a passed down thing. It's all passed down learned behavior that is all unconscious to us. So I had to first take it within myself to see, wow, I'm not loving to myself. Wow, I don't know how to communicate. And I'm always fighting with my partner because my needs are not being met. But why aren't they not being met? Because I was conditioned in childhood. Whenever I spoke up, whenever I needed my needs to be met, I was punished. So I've withdrawn from actually knowing how to communicate. So now, okay, my inner child is suffering throughout this whole process. What is it that my inner child needs? You know, and I always tell people, if you feel lonely in your relationship, it's because it's your inner child that needs more loving than your partner does. So I realized that, wow, there's so much within me that is not yet healed, that is not yet risen, that is not yet fully developed, that I first need to work on. And for as long as I don't, the relationship is still not going to work out for me to evolve. You understand? But I saw it in a way that empowered me to see the other with more compassion, because relationships can create a whole lot of resentment because our needs aren't being met fully. So I had a lot of resentment until I was like, no, I'm self-inflicting this on me. How do I stop this? Okay, the only way I stop it is to actually shatter the mirror. I need to become something else. That's how I actually dismantled the whole thing. It was only working on me, and through that, and that's why, you know why I always tell people to first work on themselves. Divorce will not become acrimonious when a person is actually working on themselves. But if you are still resentful, fights come along. You want the house, you sacrifice 10 years, and you understand. But where there's proper healing, maturity, and development, you start to see, you know what, let me attune to this person, but in a way where it's compassionate, where they also don't feel like they are the victim in the whole separation, and they can see, you know what, I'm actually holding you back. And I think what we also need to differentiate, love and marriage are two different things. Love and marriage are two different things. Okay. Love does not allow someone to sacrifice themselves. Love does not hold back someone. If I feel this relationship is holding you back, I need to be able to say, you know what, Yvette, this marriage isn't for you. It's shattering you, and it's affecting how you take care of yourself, how you take care of the kids, and how you take care of the home. I need you to do you right now. Let's split. And like the law of attraction says, what is yours will always be yours. If it's meant to be yours, then it'll come back.
I love everything that you've said, you know, like love, what you've just said about love as well. And I think it's exactly that, where we the relationship is not serving anybody, it's not healthy. I think for me, that's the biggest thing, when it stops being healthy for everybody involved. Or even when, because healthy looks different for somebody. Sometimes it's just you're not happy, like at all, and it takes a lot of going within to get to that point, and a lot of bravery as well to say, we are not meeting each other's needs, we're not fulfilled. And I think it's what Tia Mori was just saying, that for her, she saw divorce as an evolution, not as a setback, and how society sees it as a failure, because she's like, we're actually evolving as individuals. That's why we can get to the point of acknowledgement that this is not working, and the love may continue to exist, but you don't have to be within that structure, and I think for me, what you also said about the inner child, that's where, just being for me, in the relationship that I'm in right now is one of the first ones that's like really long term, where I've really had to dig deep within. And a lot of it was just ideas and me doing the inner work outside of the relationship. So before I got into the relationship, I'd done the work, I'd gone to the therapy, I've done all of that. But when I got in, it's
the practical. It's the practical. The theory, now it's practical.
And you become so vulnerable. You have so many expectations. You have all these things that you need to work through, and the relationship is a mirror, and it's a constant reminder of that, and it's so easy to just be like, you're not doing this for me, I'm not fulfilled because of you. But sometimes it's that, you don't use your voice because, of your childhood. I know for me, one of the things was that when there's conflict, I withdraw, right? And that obviously makes my partner feel very isolated, which is not healthy. And people don't always see that those type of things are unhealthy, like where people I'm just going to be quiet because that's what my mom did, I'm just going to leave the room in the middle of a conversation, and think of how invalidating that is. And that's why the inner work is important, but it doesn't stop. There's two parts of this. It doesn't stop also once you get married. And even then, I think we go into relationship thinking that the person is going to fix the things that we didn't get in our childhood, only to find out that they're human. And then that's when the resentment comes in. So it goes back to doing the inner work, looking at your childhood. When I do couple work, I always do individual sessions, because I know that from most of my work is with individuals. Most of the stuff that we need to work on is with ourselves and our childhood, how we express ourselves, how we communicate. And it's so important to do that inner work. So the biggest point that's coming out right now is do the inner work, understand your childhood and how it impacts the way that you show up in all your relationships. And it doesn't start with that one relationship where you want to get married. That one might just bring those things to the surface even bigger. But even prior to that, the previous relationships, there's probably a pattern, and you need to pay attention to that pattern and see the feedback. So Mrs. G, back to you.
So I love how the conversation is flowing, because it's coming back to doing the inner work is knowing a bit more about yourself. I mean, obviously, your inner work depends on where or how you are, or in what situation you are in life at whatever point in time. So, and there's a certain also misconception that you sometimes need to do it by yourself or at a certain time before certain things happen. And the whole point of being in relationship, not necessarily romantic or married or friendships and whatever, they show you, like you said, they mirror certain things about you. It shows you this type of person. If you are in this circumstance, this is who shows up. As a friend, you are this. As a sibling, you are this. And these things are things, for me, I have had to learn whilst being married. I mean, I got married at 24 or 25, somewhere there. So it's things that showed up whilst I'm growing, whilst we are moving, whilst we are. So whether it was me growing backwards, but for me to actually learn the lesson, because remember, lessons don't go away until you actually learn the lesson. You'll find yourself, whether it's with a friend, with the husband, with the child, with the teacher at school, you'll see yourself and you're like, wait, okay, that's me. Learn yourself, observe yourself, understand, okay, if this is me and this is how I'm reacting, wow, what does it say about me? Because yes, we fall into that victim mode. I won't lie. I was also there because I thought I have done certain things correctly. I am that child who I would get A's, I would be on time, I would do all these things right, because I thought in the world you're supposed to tick that tick sheet
boxes,
and get everything right, and then life will be for you. I mean, you did everything right, you get the medal, and life happens, and you're like, oh, okay. But I thought I did everything by the book, and here I am. okay, things are not working out. God, I said, but I did. I followed the commandments. I did everything, and then life just throws things at you, and that's when again you want. It's not everyone that's not going to be able to step away from certain things, and obviously it's not also. Not everyone can accommodate that type of lifestyle where you can step away from a certain position. You can't not be a mother if you realize something about yourself that you are seeing a reflection of, and you see, no, my mother did this to me. I can't dissolve myself and not be a mother. But I have to learn myself whilst I am the mother that I am. So it's a continued accountability check-in.
I want to, when you speak of accountability, right, for somebody that's listening right now, what are the areas in which you had to learn yourself? So is it finances? Is it, communication? What are those areas? If somebody's listening and, sometimes you can talk about things and it feels very far, from what, they can't relate it into their personal life. Yes. So what are the areas for you? Like if you could say, because I know some of the areas, that you need to speak about is maybe beliefs, or maybe it's raising children, maybe it's, so what are those areas for you?
It's all of that. It is literally all of that. I grew up with, my father just recently passed away. So certain things also happen, tricky. Certain things also happen when you meet. It's like you're on a road, right? And then you get to a T-junction. And then you have to make a decision outside of, okay, I saw marriages around me happen like this, but now this doesn't feel right. It doesn't, I feel like I need to make a different decision from what I know, from what had been modeled for me. So you get to, okay, so if we're both supposed to grow, when am I growing individually? So my partner and I, we said after I was in corporate for about 10, 11 years or so, and then we'd said once the kids have grown up, then I can do my thing. And that's when I went back to school. I resigned. I went back to school, studied coaching, did a
business diploma. That's around when we met, I think.
Yes, it is. Yes, exactly. And that's part of the reason why, because luckily we were comfortable enough to say, we know the world is evolving. We know we are also evolving. So when you need to take the next step, okay, he's entrepreneurial, full on, and he will do this and do that, but the entrepreneurial spirit is always there. So where's our security? So whether it's finances or parenting, who's going to be home if you are doing this? If you're at school, okay, fine. No, I'll take a 9 to 5 so that I can take the kids back and forth. So having, it's those, whether you're accountable with yourself, because I could have been a superwoman and said, no, don't worry, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. But it was good that we were accountable to each other to say, this is going to affect budgets, it's going to affect our spending, it's going to affect the children, your time when you're at a business school, because that demands a lot of time. You come back late at night, what's going to happen? But we were able to move with that and say, okay, this is where we are, this is where we want to go. Let's make the necessary changes around, and then let's move on. Not every transition, especially because we are two different people who grew up in two
different cultures, different backgrounds, different ways of processing things. Men and women process things differently.
Even different family structures. His parents divorced. I grew up with mine. So even that. So parenting styles, I think that is though a constantly evolving thing. I don't think it ever gets to okay, no, it's fine. This is how we do things. I think for me, accountability, just like marriage, I still say it's a choice that you make every time where you meet that crossroad. Whether you still want to carry on, and if you're going to say, okay, fine, if I need to unpack, let me unpack, and then see what do I live with from here. So that accountability for me is on every day, and I guess it needs that candidness. And if you don't have a way of communicating, which I know I didn't, my partner's he talks, like he can talk. I found that I didn't talk as much of things that
important to you?
Not necessarily important. Funny enough, with relationships, I remember at one point, I told my brother, tell me, how was I as a child? Because I'd gotten to a point, that crossroad again, if I may call it that. Tell me, how was I as a child? Because I really want to understand how I've come this far, because certain parts of me, I don't feel like this is me anymore. I think I was just doing these things because I thought they worked. And I got to the T-junction, man, this doesn't feel right. And even if I saw it from my mom, it doesn't mean that it was right. It doesn't mean that she was happy with it. I can't ask her now, but I mean, she's late also. So, okay, Nosipho, this is you. This is you now. How do you deal with it now? And I go back and I try to be that accountable. And my brother would say, oh, no, with us, you would always say, and because you're intellectual, you'll always get angry at us when you have to repeat yourself a lot of times, because I'd always say, no, man, but you're smart. Why are you doing that? And I know that's from my father. My father was a scholar and academic. And so I know I did that to myself. I did it to my siblings. But then at a point, I'm like, okay, this side, I can't communicate certain things, but the other side, I can. So it depends on the relationship dynamic as well. If I'm quiet about things that are important to me, but then I can communicate certain things up to a certain level with other relationships, what does that mean about me and being honest and being true with myself or to myself or the people around me in my different relationships?
So what I hear you saying is that you spoke a lot about accountability. So a continuous conversation, because the question was, as you evolve in the relationship, how do you allow that evolution to come? Because that's kind of what keeps the marriage together to some extent. And what I hear you saying is that communication and constant revisiting and looking at a system and saying, is it working? Is it serving us? And is there another way we can do it better? So for example, with kids, I know my partner and I, when we speak about kids, because we've done the whole list of the questions, the premarital counseling questions. They're online. Anybody, if you need to do them, some of these things are free, guys. So you can just go online, search premarital counseling questions. And there's all those questions from how do you raise kids? And when we think of that, we just think, it's just, we'll raise them in a nice home, you'll provide. No, it's, do you believe in hitting kids? How do you think we should treat our children? Are they equals to us? Are they less than us? How does your childhood, how would that affect your parenting style? How do you think that looks like? What type of school do you want them to go to? Because someone can be like, I want them to go to private, I want them to go to public, and it's a big thing. It looks like, there's so many questions. Your sex life, how does your sex life, what are your expectations in terms of that? And I think for me, the biggest thing, which is always important to me before I got into my relationship, and even as I'm in it, is the lifestyle aspect. What do our lives actually look like? Even if we do have kids, what do they look like? What do you imagine me, like what you said, do you imagine me sitting at home and working? Is there something I'm comfortable with? What do you look like? What are your expectations on all levels? And really sitting and having those conversations financially as well. How does your childhood affect your spending habits? How would that affect our relationship? What are your expectations financially? Do I want a girlfriend or wife allowance? And all those conversations, right? And it's having the conversation consistently, because we're not going to remain one thing as people, and we're allowed to evolve. And I think that is the one thing that I think is, I hear you saying, even honesty with self too.
But here's the thing, right? Accountability doesn't necessarily mean the right thing, because some people are accountable to toxicity.
Yes.
So some people are accountable to having a curfew that a man doesn't have and a woman does. Some women are accountable to raising the kids while the man is doing other things. So what does accountability really mean to you, right? Accountability doesn't necessarily mean authenticity. Accountability doesn't necessarily mean courageous.
Exactly.
Because some women are very accountable of how they clean, how they go to work. I mean, you said that you had to do a 9-to-5 for all those years. But if you truly were in a position where you are fully accountable of the role that you want to play in this world, I don't think you would have allowed yourself to stay for that long. Just an example, you understand?
That's why I said it's important to understand you get there and you ask yourself,
the crossroad.
Accountability is, okay, now that I'm here, how does this make me sleep at night? basically. And then if you make the decision to say, I'm sticking with this, that's you being accountable to whether it's toxic, whether it's good, whether it's not, you are making the decision to stick to it.
Yes. So what I'm saying is, how about we start actually negotiating these labels of accountability? Why does it have to be you actually accepting something? Sometimes accountability can be accepting it, but not actually doing it because you can see that you're doing it from a conditioned point of view. To say, okay, I'm accountable that I'm in a marriage and I'm accountable that I need to have kids, but is it something that I truly saw myself? Because some women don't want to have kids, but they do end up having kids. So some women don't want, some women, in fact, every human being is here to express themselves. And many women aren't expressing themselves because we've been conditioned to actually be lesser than, to serve, to be there, to be the pleaser. And we fully embody that role of being the pleaser that it becomes so hard for us. And that's why many women end up experiencing so much depression once the kids have left, because it's like, okay, everyone's gone, what did I do
What's
for
my
myself?
purpose?
What did I do for myself?
And on that point, I think it goes back also to understanding self.
Yes.
Knowing what your values are, knowing what's important to you. For me, I know my value structure, right? And this is something that anybody can do as well, to say, what's the most important thing to me when it comes to myself?
But here's the thing. At times we believe what we know about ourselves is what is based on culture.
What you know.
Yes, what we think we know. So, Pela, also when you look at the whole marriage setup, marriages were created after the whole revolutionary industry, and, marriages were created because of security. Yeah. But before that, people were in tribes. Everyone was for everyone. So marriages came for property's sake, so that, okay, if this man has kids with this woman, at least when he dies, he's got this. And that's why there was a contract. Pella, marriage is not something that just was.
It was always there as a system. Yeah.
It's something that is created. We understand. So, and that's why there's a contract. The contract is there to protect both people. And love doesn't need protection. You understand? But it was created for that sake. Yes, it was created for that sake, for security purposes. But then certain labels started to come up. Okay, women should be like this.
This type.
Yes. Also, the patriarchy also puts us in a situation where even when women are unhappy, they feel derided to leave because money is an impediment. Marriage is the finances. The men are always the head of the finances.
And that's why women actually had to work and be in the workforce, because not everybody is looking for everybody's highest intentions. And if we lived in a perfect world, and also I think when it comes to a system, it's never going to work for everybody.
I wanted to say,
it's never going to work for everybody. And when the work, here's what I also think, right? A lot of times when we are in relationships, we tend to project experiences that we would have even had even if we were on our own. Yes. Like I could have gone through a sad period, but when I'm in a relationship, you're making me sad. I could have gone through a period of being unfulfilled on my own because of my work, but it's so much easier to project that. And I think what I hear both of you saying, and I think we should have a part 2 because we're running out of time, but I think what I hear both of you saying is know yourself and give yourself permission to evolve. And if you are in a relationship, you're going to have to communicate that. And I think for me, one of the biggest things when it came to things to know before I get married, or even being in a relationship or a partnership or a long-term commitment, is that the person is also willing to do their inner work and they have enough self-awareness. And I think that regardless of what it is, because I also don't think that, the success, and it looks different for everybody. Everybody defines it differently, right? Which we respect. But I think that for me, my win is growth for everybody, right? My win is love for everybody. And love looks different, and it's allowed to change as well in how it expresses itself. Even if you look at a child, right? When they're a child, you have to look at them, you have to care for them and guide them in a certain way. When they go to varsity, you're like, I can't protect them. I have to allow them to, you're supposed to allow them to fully be their own person throughout, but there's certain things that you have to accept, and your life has to show up differently in that time frame. So I think it's what I'm hearing from both of you is know yourself. 2, give yourself permission to be yourself. Change your mind about the philosophies that you've taken in as your own, whether you're in a marriage or not, or in your long-term commitment. You need to be able to navigate with self-awareness. And when you notice that something is not serving you, something is just something that you adapted from your ancestors, whether it's cultural or because everything is made up, like whether it's even cultural stuff, everything is made up, no matter what. All the systems are made up, and we have to look at what works for me, right? And I think that's one important thing, to continuously be in relationship with yourself so that the relationships you're in can be honest and authentic. And also be willing to let go of what is not working. Final things that you guys want to say? You have, before load shedding, we have like a minute or two. So 30 seconds. Final last words, Tintswalo and Mrs. G.
Okay, for me, I'd say sometimes we pack, like, how you listed them, we pack things and think this is all I need to do. And I think it becomes then a huge baggage, and people think, oh, Kanti, certain things, these are relationships. It's how you relate. It's how you, so when you see something, it's a continuous, you don't stop. You don't have to do everything right. Don't think of it as this huge thing that you need to do by small, and it presents itself, because when what do they say? When the student is ready,
the master appears.
The master appears. So, and that's how it is with life. So you go on and you live life, you stay authentic to yourself, and you, okay, this is me, and what is this teaching me now? Okay, next relationship, or next whatever. And you go on like that. It's not big, it's not that you need to do everything all at once.
Okay, Tintswalo.
Last few words. Okay, Mina, it's just advice, basically. Like, make it about yourself. Learn about your traumas. Learn about your unconscious patterns, and learn about everything that you feel is an issue with the other, because it's actually an issue with you. Yeah, but know that you are your own wisest teacher, and everything that you seek is within you. The ego doesn't necessarily want us to grow because it's conformed to what has felt familiar for all these years throughout childhood and now in marriages and relationships. So start to be more introspective and start to see, okay, when I'm hurting, how do I then try to dismantle this hurt? How do I start asking questions? Okay, what is this hurt really trying to reflect, So I just advise people to start doing more work on learning about traumas, attachment styles, and being more mindful of situations that upset them, cause them to be angry, for them to really go inward, to try see, because we are, like I said, our own wisest teachers. There are authentic voices there, and it's waiting for us. It's been buried by all this conditioning, the patriarchy, culture, and it's not easy. And that's why I would have loved for this to be long, because some women are
we'll
sitting
have a part
there.
two.
They're sitting there and they want to maybe get out of marriages or maybe better their marriages, but we aren't really giving them the tools and resources and more information to really, start unpacking within themselves. Yeah. So we need a part two.
No pressure. Okay, we'll have a part two. We'll definitely have a part two. I want to thank you ladies for being here, for sharing your hearts, and your perspective, and showing up authentically as yourselves, And I think all paths lead to self. You have to make the decision to choose that. And evolution looks different for everybody. I mean, we can't give all the tools in one episode, or even 2 episodes or 3 episodes, But I think the biggest thing is always listening to yourself and being accountable to self, And for me, how I navigate life, I'm not going to always have the answers. Even as a coach, I don't have all the answers. There's things that I'm like, this is how it is. And all the theory, but the practical, is so tough. And I've had to sit with myself and say, what does growing look like? What does healing look like in the space? What does compassion for self look like? And for the other person as well, to see them not as somebody that's just there to meet my needs or to fulfill whatever idea or to put them on a pedestal for anything, to see them as a human being who has a childhood, who has a past, and to also see myself with the same compassion continuously and making a decision from a place of love. Love looks different again in all seasons. And I hope that everybody listens here today. I hope you took something, and I hope that it does enlighten your path with self more especially. And of course, how we relate with self always affects our relationship with others. And until the next episode, I'm sending you off with love. I will post the details of my guests in the comments or in the, what do you call it, the caption or the description? Yes, it's the description. So do check that out. I'll post their links to their social medias if you want to work with any of them. And I'm sending you off with love. And until next time, just remember to be kind to yourself and trust the process.
Love. Yes.